Welcome everybody to the committee of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee. I'll just go through the preamble. So all visitors must sign into the visitor book at the entrance to film crates. This includes council staff from other buildings. There's no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today. If the fire alarm is activated during your visit, you must exit the building immediately. The council officers will direct you to the nearest fire exit and will escort visitors to the building via the same point. Beside the silver man at the top of the Parliament wall, film crate staff should report to their floors assembly point. You should remain at your assembly point until directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal has advised it's safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle unless you have to do so by the fire marshal to ensure access routes are kept clear for emergency vehicles. Please note this is a public meeting and members of the public may be in attendance. The meeting will be recorded by the clerk and published online for public viewing. The taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio or video recordings, are not permitted during meetings unless with the express permission of the convener. Can members attending virtually activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking. Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members attending virtually wish to speak at any point, please indicate by clicking on the raise your hand button, and members in the chamber should also raise their hand and I will bring them in at appropriate times. So, just to begin with the agenda, any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've got Councillor Earl has apologised, but otherwise everybody else is here.
Did you have any declarations of interest? We don't have minutes for this meeting because they will go into the next audit scrutiny meeting, as this is an additional meeting that's been slotted in. So we'll just move on to the first point on the agenda, which is item 3. And we're going to hear from that's exemptions from the application of contract standing orders, and that will be presented by Stuart Getman.
Thank you, Chair. This obviously is the routine report that comes up with any exceptions that I have made in the period since the previous audit committee. Members may see find this one somewhat familiar as with the vertical farm and previous exceptions to contract standing orders with our previous supplier. Unfortunately, that supplier came through pretty late in the day to say that they were no longer able to supply, so there's been quite a lot of work to find an alternative to that. And so what this report does, it's not a duplicate, it's actually another supplier has eventually been found, and therefore I have agreed an exception contract standing orders for supply of the vertical farm as set in the report. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Thank you. I'm happy to formally move the paper to the secretary. Okay, thank you. The paper is now open to debate. Anybody would like to debate the paper? Are we happy to know the report? Sure. Also, yeah. Is Bill happy to know the report? Thank you. So we shall move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the internal audit progress report, and that will be Isabel Wright online who will present this paper.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, everybody. The purpose of the report in front of you today is to provide an update on progress with completing our 23-24 internal audit plan. The plan was agreed by committee in April of last year, including 16 assignment areas to be completed by the team during the year. Paragraph 3.1 highlights that 11 internal audit reports will be issued in 23-24. This does not include those reports issued to the Manager's Still and Integration Joint Board or the Central Scotland Valuation Joint Board, or indeed the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards External Assessment that's also underway just now. Paragraph 3.2 states that to date, 4 assignments have been completed to final report stage. These are climate change, leisure income, care home residents' monies and purchase order arrangements. 3 reviews are currently in progress, and those are FOI requests, overtime arrangements and the use of purchase cards. A summary of progress is set out at Appendix 1 with the scope and executive summary of the 2 reports that have been finalised since the last committee in February, and those are at Appendix 2. To finish, I'd ask members to note the recommendations and conclusions being made by the team with the 23-24 internal audit work. If you've got any questions, I'll obviously do my best to answer. I also have members of the internal audit team with me today available to answer any questions too. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Boyne?
Thanks, Chair. I recognise that we're only part way through the year, so there are items which are not yet started, but given the considerable attention has been given to IT systems in the past few months, I'm just wondering why the item 7 on page 13, the IT and information governance has not been started. Is that because you're waiting for the changes to finish, or is it another reason?
Yes, it's partly it is in part that we were due to start that work, and then there were things ongoing within the council with regards to IT, and to allow those changes to be made, we deferred that slightly. We've already spoken with Stuart about getting that audit started soon, and the terms of reference has been drafted and going out, so it will be undertaken shortly.
Okay, thank you. Might have asked another one. Thanks very much. On the same page, item 4, consultancy work. Any early findings on that, or would you rather wait until the end of the process?
Not specific findings, no. That just takes into account anything additional that we're asked to do, or there are any changes that are getting made throughout the year. So it can be advice, it can be queries, it can be attendance at working groups. It can just be where a service are looking for some internal audit advice. So we get various items throughout the year for that, but there's nothing that generally ends up in being an audit report as such.
But so you're not finding instances where consultancy work has been done needlessly when an internal unit could have done the same work. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay, just regarding the consultancy work, I'm assuming that you're essentially doing reported there in your answer, that you're not finding any instances where consultancy work has been needlessly done when an internal team could have done it.
No, it basically covers our internal consultancy. So it's internal audit consulting or assisting in services with maybe a new process, or if a working group was being set up, so to maybe look at controls that were in place or needed to be in place. If there was a new project, maybe helping out with the specification of that project. So it's about our own consultancy and assistance to add value, not the use of consultants by anyone else.
Okay, thanks. Didn't quite catch all of that, but some brief answer shortly. No, that's fine. Thanks very much.
Councillor Forson?
Thanks, Convener. Apologies, I missed a briefing at the tail earlier in the meeting in relation to this, so apologies if any of the kind of questions I might ask were covered in that. Looking at the no assurance category for the adult social care purchase order arrangements, there's obviously a number of areas in there that are quite concerning. And I'm just really looking to see what action plans have been put in place to address these issues. And the last paragraph we were talking about the pay rates, we found that 22 of their rates were being paid less than the contracted rates. I'm not sure how that can even happen, because wouldn't the organisations themselves be saying you're not paying us what we've been contracted for. And you know, I'm just wondering, has this been kind of raised in other areas? So I suppose I'm looking for assurances over the issues that are being raised over the whole kind of topic here, but in particular that last one there kind of baffles me a little bit.
As Bill, you want to come back?
I can come in and say overall around the work being done and trying to, and the report, the point of the report is around making sure that Clip Manager Council are getting best value, and also that there's compliance with our financial regulations. So the audit is around that. In terms of the operational arrangements, it's probably better for someone else to come in, maybe Stuart or Lindsay, and also Ewan or David. I'm not entirely sure, but hopefully that's okay.
In terms of which question?
So I think what Councillor Forson was asking was what follow-up there has been, if there's been any follow-up to the report.
Okay, I think the thing that's thrown a wee bit is the rates element. So I am looking for, I thought need to come in at some point to explain that one. And again, Jason, thinking with what that did that, so it would be helpful perhaps if you could if you could explain the context of that with something about the action plan. Thanks. The action plan, there is an action plan that was circulated. That question was asked on a briefing as well, Councillor Forster, because obviously it's quite important in terms of the response to this. So I think I'm assuming it wasn't important yesterday, but I'm assuming it was circulated to members of the committee. So there are quite a number of actions in here. Quite a number of them are actually quite short turnaround as well for the 31st of May 2024, so they are quite challenging. So there is a robust plan in there. In terms of the rates itself, I think, David, do you want to come back on that one? And then perhaps, Jason, you can maybe explain a wee bit more what you're doing. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Chair. And thank you for the question, Councillor Forson. So, as Stuart's just indicated, can I just check everybody can hear me all right? My systems are playing up a little bit, so I've had to move to my mobile phone. In terms of the action plan, there is a robust action plan here. This is obviously a poor report for the council to receive, and we fully acknowledge that, and we recognise in the discussion earlier in the week that a number of the systems and processes that have been in place that were identified through this internal audit have been in place for a considerable number of years, and does rely on three client database systems and council procurement systems having IT systems having to interact with each other, one of which is very modern, the Tech One, and the other two, CCIS and Finch, being very ancient and not functioning terribly well. So there are issues with technology. There are absolutely issues around about practice, so which we have got an action plan around in relation to, for instance, the approvals levels and who can approve packages of care, particularly in relation to the levels of funding that potentially remain and are available. So we have put in place a centralised resource allocation group, which will consider at a senior management level requests for provisions of support and packages of care to be put in place. There is clearly a training issue that in order to ensure consistency that needs to be put in place and monitored and evaluated. We think there's probably a sampling and an audit, an internal kind of to the system audit process that we require in relation to ensuring that there are care plans in place, for instance, for people who are receiving packages of care, and In terms of your last question around about differential rates, I'm probably going to ask Ewan to come in on that one, if that's okay, Chair. From the perspective that he's been around here a long time, a lot longer than I have, and will understand potentially the question that you've asked better than I do, because I have to say I don't really understand that question either, or the answer to it. Because it seems to me that providers should know what they're being asked to or being contracted to pay, and why they would receive something different to that. I'm not entirely sure, so we have to explore that. If you're okay with that, Chair, I'll pass to you.
Thank you, David. Just on that point, providers, just like any employee, would have some responsibility to check they're being paid appropriately, but where it kind of goes back to some of the practice issues and some of the recording issues. So where because of system not being updated appropriately, they're being paid less than the contracted rates, that would then cause additional workload in terms of reconciliation to invoices and sorting that out. So there's some for me around, as part of the action plan, sorting out efficient processes and doing that in a way which means we are minimising the risk of work caused by failure in initial recording. So it's part of that kind of, I call it, business process engineering piece that we need to take forward in terms of the part of the action plan. Hope that helps. Thank you.
I kind of wondered what the implications might be in relation to that. I mean, if we've been paying contractors less, is there then an obligation for us to kind of do a bit of an audit and look backwards and then recompensate, for money that should have been paid? And I'm just wondering what if that is the case, what would the financial implications be? Because I know that the challenges already around about the health and social care budget, but are we obliged to do that? And is this going to cause a bit of an issue?
Off the top of my head, I don't think it would, as long as we are logging appropriately the provider invoices that do come in and they're at appropriate rates. I don't think there should be a material additional financial risk associated with that issue. But certainly happy to go away and look at that in a bit more detail and come back with further assurance around it.
Yeah, I agree with you with regards to, we looked at a sample of transactions and we looked to see if there was contracts in place, and we tried to match these up to the actual contract rates to see if we're being charged appropriately in line with these rates. For a number of these, there was underpayments on the actual, care rate, whether it be per hour or whatever it was. But it seemed to be more to do with the systems and the kind of inefficient way they were updating social care systems with the rates, whether there was a delay or whether the person responsible for this was off. So it kind of tended to be like the old rates that we were paying, which happened to be less than the sort of current rates. So I think that's why that was. That it does link into the sort of inefficient systems and the way these are updated.
Thanks. Just a quick question on that one. Have we got a statute of limitations on that? Where if we have done that, then we can't come back in a couple of years' time and say, no, you owe us £2 million or something like
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
It's all going to boil down what the contract says. At the end of the day, if we've agreed a rate under a contract that says we would pay A and we pay B, then they potentially could reclaim the costs in relation to that. But this is just depending on what the contract is caveat for that. We would need to review the contracts that were put in place against the rates that were paid to find out when, if any, the rates have been changed to take account of the new rates in terms of the systems. So I think There's, I think, maybe a piece of work that needs to be done there from a legal perspective, just to double check, you know, to protect the HSCP's position and adult care on these changes in the rates that have been paid through a system. Does that help answer the question?
Clears it up slightly, yeah.
It's very difficult what the contract says, and so in terms of statute of limitation, debt recovery is normally 5 years, you can go back 5 years, but this is a contract, so it depends on what the contract says.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? So therefore, if we've said in this report that a lot of contracts are not in place, does that leave the council open to legal implications if there's no contracts in place and we're delivering services?
Potentially.
Councillor Shealy? Or by Councillor Quinn?
So, I'm being a very just misunderstanding this, but have we been challenged or have we disputed on any of these contracts?
We asked Derek to come in on that one just to confirm that. To my understanding, there is no challenge to the contracts at this time. Yeah. So is that your understanding, Derek?
Yes, that's correct. I've not had any challenges on these at all today, anyway.
Councillor Quinn?
Aye. No, it sounds like, you know, we're blaming the process and we're blaming the system as well. So there's mention about how we're going to do things to help the process. Is there any plans to update the system in any way to make this, you know, reduce the risk of this happening again?
So, thanks, Councillor Quinn. In terms of the wider system, I think, you know, that really does boil back to the replacement social work system, which I think, as we've said previously, is a big job and will take some years. What I would draw your attention to is the recommendation 1 and the follow-up recommendation on the action plan that was distributed previously. Now, I think it is known that the systems and the interface between the systems is somewhat challenging, but that said, it is the same for children's services as well, so they are using the same systems and got the same challenges. But the accepted recommendation in here, which is that an adult care purchase order should be issued, approved on take one at the beginning of the year, with the call-off arrangements in place for ongoing spend once those invoices are received. That, in essence, is a system improvement, bringing it in line with what happens in children's services, that should make sure that the arrangements are called off and that they're therefore on contract, if that makes sense. So, in terms of what we call the management information system, yeah, there are issues there, but that system change and implementing that will bring it in line with practice in children's services, which makes sure that it's you know, that there is a purchase order that matches with the invoices as they come through. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for that. Can I just ask a quick follow-up then? So previously we've talked about, we identified processes for automation and things. Are any of these processes related to this in scope to be involved in that piece of work? Thanks.
I think the short answer on that one is probably not in the short term. I think the one that we do need to focus on is the Finch system, which is one of the older systems in there. And I think even in advance of the introduction of a new social work management information system, I think that is one that does need to be prioritised and updated. And I think that, again, that would help with the kind of efficiency of the process. At the end of the day, you know, the duty of best value still remains irrespective of whether there's an IT system in place. So it's either a human system that's in place or it's an IT system, but that's really to help with efficiency. So it's just about making sure that the correct systems are in place, they're in there in the right order, and it's compliant with you know, the financial requirements. So yeah, I mean, I think it is a somewhat long-winded answer, but I think the social work management information system will help. But I think actually what it needs to be prioritised is pension advancing that as well, and that should also help boost the efficiency and user friendliness for the user.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, and apologies again if this was covered at the briefing, and I know an action plan was sent out yesterday that I've not had an opportunity to read. Obviously, no assurance is very concerned, and we've said there are issues in there. What's going to be the follow-up from that? And I'm looking at timescales, follow-up scrutiny, just to make sure that the committee is given proper assurances that steps that are in place in the action plan are followed through and are met.
Yeah, so in terms of what would normally happen on these council enforcement, we've got no assurance that we make sure it comes back to the committee. So I think with the chair, we discussed briefly on Tuesday, I think it was with the briefing, about that, making sure that we had that early in the programme for next year. So I should make sure that that is certainly picked up. In terms of the monitoring for this, they will be bringing a report forward. I think it's to the next committee in April, where we bring back all outstanding actions. So given that lots of things are in May, I would hope that you can start to see some progress as that comes through in April as well. But I should imagine David would want to come in, because I think it also management scrutiny in this to make sure that it's happening rapidly. So I think it might be better just hand over to David on that one as well. I think that's the key in the short term, David, isn't it?
Chair, you want me to come in at this point?
Yes, please come in.
So I am having some difficulty picking up what everybody's saying in the room, Chair. So just a couple of things, just to follow on from what Stuart was alluding to. We're absolutely content to go with whatever the council decides in relation to follow-up monitoring and so on and so forth. And if there's an expectation around about something in relation to April, looking at the actions that we had set that we would have in place by that time to assure committee that steps are being taken, then we'll go with that without any challenge or difficulty. I just wanted to, Chair, if that's all right, come back to the previous point, which was around about the analogy that was being made with children's services in Clackmannan. Things are actually really quite different at one level between children's services and adult services, insofar as the management team within the Health and Social Care Partnership have to operate across three public bodies in relation to all of this kind of activity, whereas the Children's Services Department within Clackmannanshire Council only has to work across one authority, one set of systems. So whilst the Clackmannanshire systems are there and in all other circumstances should be the same, we actually also have to work across three systems, all of which are completely different from each other. So that does take officer time, and we do need to try and ensure that what we're able to do is have the leanest systems that are available appropriate, and in order to ensure that nobody's processes are compromised by this. I thought it was important for the committee to hear that.
Thank you, Councillor Coyne.
Thanks, Chair. David has sort of addressed my question, which is going to be, to what extent is the solutions model is impacted by having different IT systems that don't work together? You've kind of addressed that, but just how big an impact that would have in terms of the resolution to all of this?
David, do you want to come back on that?
I think that's it's a fair challenge and a fair question, Chair. This is something that's been in place for the last 8 years. It's not a new issue now, and I think what we've got with this audit report, terrible as it is, is an opportunity to absolutely focus on this issue in relation to effective provision of adult social care services for the people of Clackmannanshire, and ensure a proper and appropriate allocation of resources and use of resources that are provided to discharge that. So we now know what we know. We might not have known about much of this issues in terms of the impact hitherto, but we know that we've been working within complex arrangements, but this provides us with a real clear steer with a view to looking at how can we across the three public bodies plus within the HSCP enable our workforces to work as effectively as they can do, and ensure good governance and appropriate use and best value for council's resources and the health board resources.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson.
Great, thanks. No, I appreciate those comments, David. And one thing that's kind of come into my mind is I've certainly over the last number of years raised concerns over the scrutiny that the council has over the kind of operations in relation to the health and social care partnership. And for me, this is probably the first time that we're actually getting down into the nitty-gritty of a lot of these issues. So I suppose I'm looking for assurances that we feel that we now, or that we do have the sufficient scrutiny levels in place for the council to, particularly for us as elected members, to be able to kind of look at a lot of these issues. And I know this is one part of an internal audit, but is there anything else that we can be doing really to strengthen the scrutiny for elected members around about our partnership with the Health and Social Care Partnership?
David, did you want to comment on that?
Certainly, Chair, thank you. So we could get into a very long-winded conversation here, Councillor Forson and Chair, about the nature of health and social care integration and how it is expected to work as opposed to how it has actually been working. But I think there is something around about the current review of the integration schemes for Falkirk and Clackmannanshire and Stirling, which is the integration schemes being the binding legal document between health board and councils, or council in Falkirk's case, as to how integration of health and social care should be progressed, remembering that the whole point of it is to improve the experience of health and social care services delivery and ensure a seamlessness between public bodies who are responsible for the delivery of services and continue to remain responsible for the delivery of services through something called a HSCP, recognising that HSCP is not an organisation, it is just a name within which three workforces are expected to work better together and in a more coherent and aligned way. So that takes leadership from within the HSCP to ensure and support workforces to work better, to work more joined up, collaboratively, etc. But it also incumbent on that is for the councils and the health board is not just a responsibility around about scrutiny, but it's also around about enabling, and so we have to. So these two audit reports, but particularly the no assurance report, provides us an opportunity to look at how can we improve the experience of citizens across Clackmannanshire in this case, but Clackmannanshire and Stirling in relation to the HSCP, by looking at the systems that we've got, the ways that we work, the approaches that we need to take in order to minimise bureaucracy, in order to minimise the taking away of attention from providing support and care to people, but ensuring that it's done properly. So I think we've still got a bit of way to go, if you don't mind my saying, Councillor Forson. I think I can tell you really with a degree of confidence that that the arrangements in Clackmannanshire and Stirling Integration Authority haven't been operating to the maximum effect or benefit over the course of the last 8 years. We need to change that because we have a legal requirement to work within the public bodies legislation, and the review of the integration schemes should get us into a better place in that respect. And I think the transparency of that's been created as a consequence of this internal audit provides an absolute focus on practice, unquestionably, practice within the workforce and practice of leadership and management, but also the experience of and the contribution and collectivism, if you like, of joined up working between and across both councils and the health board, which is what was actually set out and agreed in the integration schemes way back in 2015, 2016.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay. Oh, Councillor Bailey.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually to jump back to Appendix 2, which is in relation to the care home residence ones. There are 8 recommendations there in terms of suggestions that we should put in place. And I assume that none of them are problematic and probably not all, if not all those, already in place.
Do you want to comment on that? David?
Yes, I'm happy to come in on that. I didn't fully hear the question, if I'm being honest, but I guess what I'm hearing, what I think I heard, Chair, and you can clarify this for me if that's possible, was an assurance that the actions should be relatively straightforward in terms of rectifying. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right, thank you. So yes, the answer to that is yes. This shouldn't have been allowed to happen. I would say that we've had, as I understand it, considerable issues of ensuring consistency of management and leadership within that particular facility over a number of years. So inevitably, as a consequence of that, there will be things that will slip. Again, having said that, the processes and procedures that should be followed and are evident to all staff within that facility are not difficult to put in place, not difficult to implement, and not difficult to monitor and oversee.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay. I would normally say I'm happy to move the paper. Unfortunately, in this instance, I will move the paper, but the committee has obviously been very concerned about receiving a report of limited assurance and no assurance as part of the internal audit. But I am happy to see that means that it's open for line of discussion, and that we have had a substantial briefing on Tuesday regarding this, but we will be insisting as a committee and as councillors on follow-up to see what's been implemented, in the hope that we can assure our internal auditors that these matters are being addressed. And often it's when matters come up that are of great difficulty that we're able to implement change. So it opens the door for us to be able to do that. So it's a value that we're seeing papers like this coming to committee that are very transparent, and I think that hopefully should give assurance to the public that as a council we're taking things really seriously and making sure that matters like this are improved in the future. So thank you. Do you like to second the paper?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the paper and echo a lot of the comments that you've made there, convener. I think when lights are shone in certain areas and maybe doesn't turn out what you want it to do, you've got to take it as an opportunity. And I think, as David has expressed there, this is a good chance for us to have a bit of review, a bit more transparency, and move things forward, hopefully to see things in a better place. As a committee, we'll certainly be looking at these specific issues moving forward, but overall the integration scheme, I think for health and social care is up for kind of review at the moment, and we really need to be having a quite a look at that to make sure that it's working, and that we make sure as a council that we're satisfied with the arrangements in place. So yeah, I'll second the paper on that basis.
Thank you. The paper's open to debate. Would anybody like to come in? Okay, are we happy to vote the paper? Thank you. And so the next item, so item 5 on the agenda is the final review of the 2021 to 23 police business plan, and that will be presented by Pete Leonard. Thank you, Pete.
Chair, good morning, members. So, Council approved the current business plan for 2023-24 in November 2023. Reviews of that plan will follow later in the scrutiny cycle, currently scheduled for 13th June for the next report for that plan. This report, however, concerns the final review of the previous business plan, which covered the period from 2021 to 2023, which that plan was agreed by Council in September 2021. So this plan covers the period immediately after the pandemic and progress against some of the priorities that actually needs to be considered in this context, and that also the cost of living crisis which followed the pandemic. That said, there has been steady progress on the majority of improvement actions and policy developments, with around 50% of those being delivered in line with expectations in the plan. And there's been significant work being done on the remaining actions for just a handful. These remaining items have been rolled over into the current business plan to continue that activity. Paragraphs 3.2 to 3.4 summarises the progress on policy development, whilst paragraph 3.28 to 3.30 summarises the progress on improvement actions. And Appendix B provides more of the detail on each of those for further scrutiny. I'd just like at this point to refer to one of those, the PLC 213101, which is around the net zero strategy and action plan. In the update in this report, it indicates that a report will come to council in March. And that's not the case, because we've recently discovered that we need to do a strategic environmental impact assessment of the plan, and that will take some months. So we're building that into the forward plan for the council. I wanted to correct that, and it wants to be corrected. Appendix B also provides service performance details, as reported on the local government benchmarking framework. This is a national framework for performance benchmarking, and it's got set timetables for reporting and publishing the results. So the most up-to-date data we have through this framework is available from the year 2021 to 2022. These results show generally strong performance of police services in terms of meeting our own internal targets, but also meeting national benchmarks. Now, Appendix B sets out the police services risk register. So together with my colleagues who are here, I'd welcome questions from members. Thank you, Chair.
Pete, do you have any questions? Councillor Coyne?
One question is, why do we bother including pages 27 to page 31? The information is 2 years out of date. I don't see the point really in including that. It doesn't tell us anything. Because that's the situation 2 years ago. Is there a point in including that in the report?
Well, that is the process that all the business plans have been operating to in terms of the performance data. We only use the performance data for where they're actually reported to report. So that is, unfortunately, the set timetables for reporting data. I think the most latest data is due for issue quite soon. But that still would be 12 months prior to.
Would you like to come in?
Last year, this is an unusual problem with the local government benchmarking framework. Yeah, so in terms of business plan, a service has got 2 sets of indicators. One is their own internal indicators based on their own processes. The other is the kind of national framework, which is the local government benchmarking framework, and the benefit of that is it does give members a kind of sense of how that manager is performing against other councils and how their performance is going up or down in the context of the wider environment. So it is valuable from the perspective of giving context and giving a sense of comparative performance. The difficulty we have with the local government benchmarking framework is it's always a year behind. So that the data that's just coming through at the moment and will be reported in June, that is at the moment, it is at a high level, it's not broken necessarily down in the constituent parts, so there's a very high level, but that's already a year to date. So it relates to the 22-23 performance period, so peak right we're always a year behind. The difficulty with this plan is that it's the phasing of the business plans. So at the moment, what we do is in the August committee, we do the people one and we'll have a focus on that. So in terms of the lag, the director of people has got a lag of 1 year plus 4 months, say. By the time it gets to partnership performance, you've got a lag of 1 year plus 6 or 7 months. And at the time you get into place, which is the back end of that, you're almost at the 2 years. And obviously this report is due to go up in December and it's come forward now. So we're at 2 year lag on that. So I think one of the things that we have discussed internally is, does it make sense? There's always going to be a lag because that's the way the local government benchmarking framework it is. But does it make sense to just deal with all the business plans? And at the one meeting, so one, there's a will give members a sense of comparative performance across the whole organisation at the same time, but also that'll get away from having this almost a year and a half, 2 year lag. So to some extent, I mean, I think every time that we've had a report come forward, I think members have asked in one degree or another is why is there such a lag on this? So it's just an issue that we've got with the local government benchmarking framework. Unfortunately, it's the best we've got for now, but I do think there is a value in it. I still think there is a value, but yes, it is historic. That's the difficulty that comes with it. So hopefully that answers. But it's been an age-old issue. It's been here for a long, long time.
Well, here's my question. May I suggest an alternative approach, which is that you present the benchmarking report for all disciplines at the same time as early as the information becomes available, and just leave it out of this. It's just paper. It's not useful. If you want to look at benchmarking, that's a different exercise. But this is about monitoring our own performance against our own plans, our own standards. I don't think benchmarking is of significant importance in that. Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Do I agree? I guess it depends how you approach business planning. I mean, I still feel that there is a, I don't agree necessarily that it's just paper. I think there's this element, even if it's historic, showing how we're performing and getting assurance as to whether we are improving on that. I think whilst the comparative data is delayed, I think the services without that comparative data can still bring forward the trend data earlier. So I think that is something we could look at. It does complicate business planning because what you're starting to do is show data. You would potentially be in a situation where you were showing trend data because that's your data, you're in control of that. You submit that into the improvement service for the local government benchmarking framework, so you can show that trend data much earlier. But then a year later, you would be showing your trend data as current or as close to current as possible. And then you would be showing the comparative data which related to the same period a year later. So it would get quite confusing, I should think. I think generally, though, I do think we need to do something that kind of brings it much closer to the date of completion, the date at the end of that financial year. So I think that's no beyond the will of us. I would think in terms of the management team, we can bring something that's much, much closer to the end of the reporting period. I think at the moment, 2 years of this feels somewhat out of date. But that came out of an element of trying to get the Audit and Scrutiny Committee given that we no longer have service committees, I kind of focus on particular areas, so today's is place. But clearly that's creating delays in data, so I think we need to look at that again. And maybe the themed element of these committees has had its day. We need to just think of the themes being something more about performance or policy or those areas is something we can look at. But hopefully that explains, but it needs a wee bit more thought. But it's certainly registered on the concern about the lack.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find it at all helpful at all to read that, because any time you showed up with a flag that wasn't nice and green, you say, well, maybe by now it's been fixed. Utterly pointless. Utterly. For the purpose of this committee, it's pointless, and I think we should drop it. So I'm moving into the debate at the moment, so. Do you agree at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Quinn's been waiting around to come in. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. Quick question, I think it's be over P, and 3.3 on page 24, there's only one action there, you just said there was no progress. Could you just tell us a little bit more about that, please? About the compliance with energy efficiency in social housing.
Okay, so I'm sure you find the question is 3.3.
On page 24.
So this is in relation to the EASH standards. So part of this has been waiting for some time for guidance from the Scottish Government on what that standard is and how that's going to be measured, how it's going to be implemented, potentially how it's going to be funded. So that's created a lag right across the social housing system. Nevertheless, there are activities that we've been doing that are in line with energy efficiency. And in terms of each one standard, we are very high on that. I don't know anything to that.
Yeah, I think Central P is probably the covers it. I mean, the EASH standard, Scottish Government are consulting at the moment on the social housing net zero standard, which will come in place. EASH standard, so there'll be a lot of consultation up the one, and that's still ongoing coming up close. So as soon as that standard is defined, we'll be in a better place to anyway understand exactly what the requirements are moving forward and start working with the plan with the new standard when it comes in. Okay, so thanks very much. So just to confirm then, we're waiting for the details of the new standard. That's why we're saying there's no progress made here. That makes sense then. Thank you.
Thanks for your patience, Councillor Fairman.
Thanks, Chair. So a couple of questions in relation to the workforce planning part 321 on page 23. It's talked about the remote hybrid working on for many colleagues. The way we're talking about this, we're talking about it's been a permanent change, a permanent provision for hybrid and remote working. It also talks in about survey of the staff, trade unions and engaging them. It's about engaging them to look at a number of different work styles. Is there any sense at all that we've got buy-in from the council staff in relation to this direction of travel? Has it thrown up, or expected to throw up other difficulties in terms of regarding homes and place of work, and what that means in terms of council's responsibilities? And the other thing I think is that 324, when it talks about the ageing workforce, I know that's not unique to us, it's across workplaces across the country, but the numbers are concerning for us as a council in terms of experience and knowledge of potentially work out door at any point from here on in. Is there a strategy and are we able to give some sight of what strategy looks like for trying to resolve some of the issues that come with the demographics of the workforce?
There are two questions there. I think let's start with the last one. Perhaps I might bring in some colleagues out with one around the new way of working across all services. But in terms of the workforce planning one, there's definitely needs to be a strategy. We don't have a strategy in place yet. It's one of the things that on our things to do list that we've not really got around to dealing with that. What we have started to do though is Forming closer links with our own employability teams, bringing through apprenticeships. In this last year, not quite so much, but the previous year, we had something like 30 kickstart apprentices coming through our different services. And we also got a really active apprentice program within the property team. So we are doing some things to bring forward people into the workforce, but we don't yet have a firm strategy about how that's going to be funded. In terms of the new ways of working, in place services, even through the pandemic, we have quite a number of people that are still working in their physical place, but from the kind of office-based staff, traditionally office-based staff, normally those are working from home. We are starting to settle down more recently. Place the fact that we're only to be in three days a week on average. There's different kind of rotas kicking around depending on the needs of various services. I think in terms of sense of direction, we are looking to develop our approach to this further, which will include use of IT technology and also tying in the asset strategy and making better use of concrete building, for example, making the different style of furniture, different style of rooms, more collaborative operation. So again, there's a work stream around this, which Stuart is leading, and Chris has been key on it. So I guess you could add anything else you want to add?
Thanks, Pete. So maybe go back in terms of workforce planning. So Council will call it, we approved an ultra workforce plan a few months ago now, ahead of our full workforce strategy, which will come in for 2028. And part of that is looking at how we upskill, how we recruit, potentially looking at modern apprentice programs, potentially graduate apprentice programs. So we do have measures in place to take forward on that. Also, I understand, I think, part of the next best value type review focus on workforce planning, so again, that will be coming to the forefront. In terms of hybrid working and flexible working, as Pete has alluded to, we've kind of got no less than 40% attendance within the office environment. It's difficult for votes and that you are when you're physically out. We're also in the process of conducting a staff survey of the flexibility works in terms of how many of our staff are aware of. It's not just about hybrid working, it's about the range of flexible working styles that we've got, so how effectively they're used, how well they're promoted, what's the uptake, etc. So that will give rise to action plans as well, so we'll take that forward. And so there are measures in place to address that. In terms of the work styles, we had a short life working group that included representations from the unions. So the work styles is more akin to the IT equipment that staff will need to do the jobs, whether they need a laptop, a phone, no equipment, whether they can get hybrid office-based in communities, etc. So work styles will go on that. So there's ongoing work in relation to that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yes, please, Stuart. Page 2 is 32 stats based on at the bottom end the following complaints that were upheld. That's the ones that just leave. I see that in 2021 you were at 41.6%, which was 60 complaints. By 2022-3, it's gone up to 49.2, which was 74 complaints. I would have thought there would be more complaints during COVID than after. Maybe I don't know. Is there a reason you think why upheld complaints?
Not done specific analysis to look at that, to be honest with you. I think that one of the things that we are seeing is that post-COVID society in general is complaining more and has been more vociferous and they've got high expectations of vociferous in following up things. So that would require you expect to see more complaints on that basis. In terms of why more are being upheld, I couldn't really say what they do. It would imply we're making mistakes. What it would imply that we are the reviews that we're doing on claims are more thorough and are more fair and transparent But I couldn't, and I'm not tell you, can provide any detailed analysis on this stuff.
Do you think it's something that's worth looking at that might begin to point the finger at areas of concern? If they're all concentrated on one group of people that work function, then that worth looking at.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think in days gone by when we had resources to do that, we had a strong EFQM approach, and that's exactly the kind of things that we were doing. But you know, the management efficiency we've been taking over the years, we don't have necessarily that capacity to do some of these things, but nevertheless, I'm willing to do them.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? No?
One more, just trying to find it. Why? Yeah. Page 36. Page 36. Second item, just the line says, with the added need for income assistance to be PSN compliant before the 31st of March 23, obviously past that date, did that spare any trouble for us? Again, sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Point. Yeah, some of the practice we're working on at the moment, we're working with external suppliers and provider systems to understand what the requirements are using compliance with existing systems. We know that we're moving to a new housing and property IT system, but for the time period that before those existing systems, we need to ensure that we're using compliant. Some that we're actively engaging with the suppliers at the moment, and tying in obviously with the to discuss including the other using compliance. So yeah, something that's very much on our radar to ensure that we get assurance in that area. It's part of the
I'm certain that's the case, but what I was wondering was, did we get into any bother for being non-compliant at that date?
I think it actually should have been 2024 rather than 2023, and so it's that's what we're working to on that. I guess the PSN looks at the whole ecosystem. It just doesn't look at the corporate side of it. So services also have management information systems. We've been talking about social work one this morning. That's the responsibility of the management in that service. The housing management information system is the responsibility of housing management. We've got a corporate system that interacts, supports, facilitates those. So if one piece of the ecosystem is not compliant, that means that there may be difficulties with the whole system not getting PSN compliant. So I think the question that you're asking is for me, that is an appropriate question to answer. So we are speaking to all the various systems owners, making sure that issues that have been identified are being addressed. There's a new housing management information system that's in the process of early stages procurement that will address it. But what we're trying to look at to ensure PSN compliance in the short term is to make sure that either the suppliers put some sort of fixes on it, so it could be encryption, it could be various other security fixes on that, or we're looking at what's called bell channels, so that we're putting a rain gap between the system and the corporate system. So yes, it will cause difficulties if it's not compliant. PSN compliance when it comes back, you get a kind of rag sort of red, amber, green. So in essence, the red has to be fixed, and the amber and green, they need to see you've got a clear plan and clear timescales. They very much need the internal audit process working through. So yes, it could in theory cause issues, but we are working through what some of the fixes are on that to ensure that the whole ecosystem is safe.
So if I condense all of that down, the answer to my question was no. Didn't get that very trouble because it was the wrong date. That's fine.
I don't know, Andy, is it the wrong date or is it the right date that you've got in that report? I think you said 2023, I think the councillor asked what was the consequences of it not being done with 2023. My understanding is it's 2024. Yeah, okay. Apologies, councillor, I kept your question thrown there.
Fine.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Any other questions? No?
No, I give up.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to move the paper and thank Pete and the team for the substantial work as always that has gone into this paper. And I'm really encouraged to see actually the level of collaboration across different services in terms of taking forward the Be the Future and the transformation themes. I thought that was really important and came out clearly in the paper. And also we're encouraged to know that some of the information and benchmarking will hopefully be addressed in the future. But ultimately I know our whole team's involved as well in bringing the papers together. So thanks to the full team. But it's very useful for us as a committee to see the progress that's been made on these areas. So happy to move the paper. And would you like to second the paper? Councillor Boyd?
I'll just formally second, Chair, if that's all right.
You're open to debate. Would you like to debate the paper? No. Okay, are you happy to vote the paper? Thanks, Pete. Next, so we shall move on to item 6 on the agenda, the Community Empowerment Act Annual Report, Community Asset Transfer and Participation Requests, and that will be presented by Stuart Pittman. Stuart.
Thanks, Chair. This report updates members on community asset transfers and participation requests, or formal community asset transfers and participation requests in the context of the Community Empowerment Act. I think we did have some debate as to why this report should come forward, the Chair and Vice Chair, because there were none that did come forward in the current year, but we did feel on balance that it was worth at least that coming forward for common challenge and complaint, particularly in the context of the recent budget consultation and also recent budget that was agreed last week. So yeah, I do apologise that it hasn't got zeros in there, but I think that's an invaluable challenging debate as much as anything else. So myself, obviously, Pete and Liz really are here to answer any questions that members may have. Chair, thank you.
Councillor Morrison?
Yeah, I had to kind of think to myself, what was the point of this report when you're saying zeros there? But I think it raises a lot more questions, and there could probably be more information in this report. I know it's a statutory report about the number of actual community asset transfer requests, but there's a lot of inquiries in here, and it says there's inquiries that are not necessarily translated to requests. I would like to have seen some information on that, so I'm wondering if we could maybe get kind of a wee bit of an update just on the inquiries, and particularly how many inquiries there, why they don't actually translate into full requests. I know how much work was on around about this sort of area, so I have to say that there's a bit of underselling in this report for me. So this is an opportunity maybe for the officers to maybe give a bit more flavour and update of the work that has actually been done.
Thanks, Councillor Forson. Yeah, I mean, I think we've always been a bit nervous about putting in informal contacts in a formal report, but I do think we can build in a flavour, the activity, and build that up, because there have been informal expressions of interest. Let's just talk about the expressions of interest have come in. They have just not transmitted any formal bids, and there has been a lot of discussion around some of these. And I think we have seen through the recent budget engagement, there has been dialogue that hasn't necessarily materialised into anything. So yeah, I think we will take that away and make sure there's a richer picture painted. Without, I think we can do that without necessarily breaching any confidences. That somebody might want to come forward, make a request without that having any. Without that, having any consequences to that, because I think we do want people to come forward in the confidence that if they decide not to, then they can walk away without that having any consequences, if that makes sense. But I think we can definitely pick that up and make sure there's a richer picture And hopefully there is more coming forward from next year on the basis of what was agreed at council last week as well.
Lee would like to come in as well.
I just also want to say is this is quite specific in terms of the Community Empowerment Act, but in actual fact, as a council generally, you know, if there is somebody in the community that is interested in, you know, taking a piece of land, we kind of look at it, you know, rather than having to put them through this kind of process, this formal process. If we have the ability to do so, that is something that we, in terms of officers, engage in and discuss and work out the best practice.
Yeah, I suppose just coming back in on that, you know, there have been kind of informal expressions of interest and conversations had. I suppose for a committee, it'd be good to hear us to get underneath the reasons why they might not have translated into, you know, so have there been 100 expressions of interest and absolutely zero of them of you know, kind of, what I'm looking for, have progressed and to be anything, or have there been like 10, or, you know, so I suppose it's getting more information to get that picture is quite important for us to be able to kind of get underneath it. And I know this is a statutory report, but sometimes I think we need to take the opportunity within these, you know, statutory reports to just bring out everything. And I know you said you kind of want to do that, but there's really no information for us to get underneath or scrutinise.
Wondering if I could maybe get a wee bit more information within the schools and the groups. And Leslie, would you mind maybe just coming forward to help with that? Because I think so. There have been a number of expressions of interest. They tended to be. I know Leslie, I don't want to put you on the back foot because I know you would want to maintain the competencies. But have you got a kind of sense? But for me, it was some of the groups might have. The facilities might not have been actually the ideal facility for them. The facility might have been too big. The facility might have been, once we provided data in terms of usage, in terms of cost and whatnot, it kind of made them think twice. Have you got a kind of sense without, you know, I'm not asking you to come back with data here, but we give a flavour to the committee about some of the issues that arose with those early conversations?
Yes, it is, as Lee said, that in some cases we can actually follow through on an inquiry under the terms of the provisions of the Community Empowerment Act without completing it. And the statutory report doesn't need necessarily need to reflect that. And yeah, I did confine the report to the statutory reporting. The other issue may be the lag, that when we get an inquiry, a time lag, when we get an inquiry, it's quite often about a year before something actually follows through. So I think the issue of this year that we've chosen to present the first report would be that some of the inquiries being made in the previous year were being made at the time when we were still coming out of the pandemic, and we were making different use of our own assets at the time, and it might have been more difficult for us to follow to help people as quickly as they wanted to be helped. And so yeah, we get a lot of inquiries that are probably based on a little bit of misunderstanding about what the Act is. So they're using the Act because they've been encouraged to use the Act, which is what we're supposed to do. And then we realise that they're misunderstanding. They think that we can make it possible for them to have an asset. And that we have assets necessarily, we might have assets available to them, but they're, as you said, Stuart, they're not suitable. They're not thinking about an asset when they inquire. They're asking us to find an asset for them. And when we tell them what we tell them the whole estate is available, and they have to decide if it's suitable. So they sometimes don't follow through because they have misunderstood that we're not actually required to provide an asset for them to think about and follow through on.
Councillor Benny?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, have we looked into the possibility of support from people who have already went through the asset management and then being able to then go to these people who are in two minds whether they can do it or not, and give them help unofficially to make it easier for them to make that decision?
perhaps I could come in this thing and you could fill in any of the blanks that I might leave out. Yeah, I mean, there certainly has been, just going to say overtures again, we're in very informal conversations here. It's early stages, and we're trying to encourage them to form the process, but also help them with that. So we provided data, we've sometimes we provided data before we probably think we really should have provided the data because there's just the early days and things, but we try to make sure that, you know, operating costs and usage rates and things like that. I think as Leslie alluded to there, there is a need, so it might be a need, we need a space to operate our group out of. But what our assets are not necessarily maybe bigger or wider or more costly than they need for that specific use. So we've tried to point them to other agencies or other supports that might do that. One of which has been CTSI. They actually do have a support for services to help with that. I guess I would say that quite a few that's come through this year. I think as we've got into those conversations, it's more about they're actually looking for a lake rather than a building, if you know what I mean. And so I think there is, again, I think Leslie alluded to it, it is more about trying to understand the need earlier and trying to, well, is that community asset transfer? Because that comes with a lot of work, it comes with a lot of responsibility, and I think, you know, said at the public meeting in Misaki that there are various iterations of how you get to an outcome on these things, and it could be a license to occupy, it could be a lease, it might be a full-blown community asset transfer, or at the end of the day, it might just make sure that we're providing a long-term let in a group or something. So there is an element around that. I think I personally have picked up that there is that groups do prefer to come direct to the council rather than go through CTSI or anything like that. So I think that's something that we're looking at. And obviously the council need to have an additional support and resource around that. So I think that should be help with that one. I mean, that is coming through quite clearly that the role of external groups like CTSI or the community ownership in Scotland, they really need to come in when they're actually at a much more advanced stage, rather than having, you know, I think officers can tend to try and tease it out, and I think there's clearly more of that needs to happen. Some of that support, and sometimes it's about putting them off, to be quite frank, because you need to know what you're getting into, and you need to know what it is that you need to know to get to that outcome, rather than thinking, oh, we're going to take from this facility, because it comes with a heck of a lot of responsibility. So I think there definitely needs to be that more direct, ongoing engagement to work through the need with the council. But I think, Leslie, I think it's fair to say that we have tried to support. I know CTSI has actually, you know, go and look at other facilities, see what they're doing, see the great things that they are doing. I guess the other side of that is understand some of the challenges that come with that as well, because it's, yes. I've always said that it's not a bloody civic centre. It's a big facility, not for the faint-hearted, but that community still got around it all, and they made it happen. The same happened with other Highway, etc. as well. So, Leslie, I don't know if there's anything you want to argue that.
David wants to come in as well.
So I was just going to say that I would have seen through the Management Council's Facebook page as well that we were promoting the Scottish Land Fund. Well, it was via Resonate, I think it was, who were there to answer questions about community assets, purchase, sales, lease, funding, which I thought was really quite interesting, you know, that had actually gone around the kind of management who were actually linked into that. And just to add, you know, to the fact that, you know, that we are doing stuff as well. But
sorry, Leslie, you want to?
Yes, I just wanted to reassure the councillor that our community groups are quite well networked and they do speak to each other. So they do learn from each other, and we have been able to refer some recent inquiries to other trusts that have successfully completed community asset transfers. It's been a pleasure to do that, actually, to say this was an example of an asset transfer that was very easy to process, and if they're willing to speak to you, you will learn a lot from them. But they also learn some of the negative parts that Stuart mentioned about some of the difficulties from them. They learn that from other groups rather than they learn it from us or from an organisation. And there is also an organisation funded by the Scottish Government which provides support for community asset transfer for groups. So groups do have a choice where they can go to for support. They can choose their support or none at all.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Coyne?
Yes, it's just the questions surrounding the confidentiality of the process. In what way is the council restricted from advising, say, the board councils and interest expressed in such and such a group? The board councillors can come involved, can help in the process, but maybe some of the least if we're aware of it, we can add something to the mix. Is there a reason that we don't get to know about it?
I don't think there's a specific, I think it's really about the formality of this report and the process. I think the couple would discuss, I certainly live, I'm happy to discuss with members about particular instances where there has been interest. Is probably more about the formality of this report, but certainly, you know, I think Leslie, we'd be happy to discuss with any board member, because I think the board member can often help. The board members, you know, my experience, the board members often can help with that. The difficulty with that is that it does become a full-blown formal community asset transfer. We always can get warm with board members, is that if you get too involved, you might not be able to, you might have a conflict of interest when it comes to the decision. So there is a balance there, but quite often board members can help with the point in the right direction, you know, advising the process, advise who to speak to, etc. Or advise looking at we didn't look at X, Y, or Z, you know. So, but you know, I don't think very unless the group were specific. People are making tentative inquiries. We don't want to put folk off. We want any, you know. So I don't think, you know, we can always go back to the group and ask, is there any reason that we can't disclose that? They may or may not say otherwise. But Leslie, I mean, I know that you're dealing with the
Pete wants to come in here.
I'm sure just to show councils that there are examples where we've had local councils getting involved in working with groups, whether it's through a formal community asset transfer or whether it's a mature stage in terms of exploring options. So you do a fundraising, we're doing a man with that group there. So, and similarly before that, we had similar engagement with local members in Dublin. I know there's been a lot of activities from the councils, the soccer group. So that is kind of going on. We are speaking with councils to build that intelligence and to build understanding and inform our approach to looking forward.
Any other questions? Well, I'm happy to move this paper. I'm actually glad this came to Audit Scrutiny. We also had some debate back and forth on whether it should or not, but I'm very glad about the debate that's taking place due to the importance of this work. And again, thank you for the paper coming forward, although it looks like there's not anything happening. And personally, as a councillor, and I'm sure the rest of the councillors around this table are really aware of the substantial work that Leslie does on this. And we're very grateful for that. So we're happy to bring the paper even to get a chance to say that. So thank you. And would anyone like to move on to the second, Councillor Corson?
Yeah, I would like to second it. I guess the reason I asked the questions was to allow Leslie and the service to maybe just highlight some of the work that is ongoing. I know there's significant work of, you know, kind of been on visits with Leslie and we've had discussions, etc. So when I saw the paper, I was just like that, we must have tricked to be able to kind of highlight exactly some of the work that has been going on there. So to be able to kind of draw that out and get some more perspective around it was really quite helpful. And I know that, you know, it is a kind of statutory paper there, but just putting a bit more colour around it has been quite helpful, so thanks.
Okay, so we're going to debate, and would you like to debate the paper? You're happy to vote the paper? Thank you, thank you. Now moving on to item 7, the Environmental Health Official Food Control Progress Report, and that will be presented by Emma Friday. Thank you.
members. So the purpose of this report is to provide members with an overview of progress of the Council's official food control service plan for the year 2024, attached in Appendix 1. This was submitted to Food Standards Scotland for review in June 2023. The report provides details of the recovery programme for the restart of food law inspections following COVID, stating that this is based on a phased approach which prioritises businesses that are at highest risk. Section 3 of the report sets out how the service is progressing with the recovery plan and highlights that the environmental health team is on target to complete the inspection programme in all categories but 3. These categories contain the largest number of businesses. It's recognised that it has been some time since these premises were inspected and that food safety standards could slip. However, in line with the recovery plan and the lack of available resources, the team will need to continue to prioritise higher risk premises, but they will respond to complaints raised by members of the public on these premises. Section 5 of the report highlights staffing issues that the team have faced over the last year and the staffing deficit that the Food Standards Scotland Audit identified in the audit last year. It is the view of the service that any staff deficit resulting from changes made to the food rating system should be met by central government, or that any new system should be made resource neutral. Thank you for taking any questions. And I've got one here who's environmental health team. Questions, Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Can we compare the tables on page 54 with the information on page 63? I was trying desperately to work out what these various groups and plans were on page 54, where the penetration percentages are in terms of carrying out work. The average for the year is 40% overall. We've got 331. That thing is in the second column, 132 of those were examined, and the average is 40%. So that suggests that at this point anyway, you need to have done some prioritisation and thinking, since you haven't got full penetration. And I was hoping to find out whether you'd been concentrating on high risk or just the volume, and how you decided which ones with your meagre reserves of energy you would concentrate on. And I wasn't able to actually give labels to those groups bands on page 54. Can you, I mean, we've got a description on page 63 of various business types, but there, and then there's a little analysis below that, which was a bit of a puzzle to me to try and work out, and I just couldn't finish it. So I'd like to know what you concentrated on, and that's it. What did you concentrate on?
Thank you. Yes, I did want to add in the role of the practices and apprentices. I think we can be afraid that it was going to distract from the role in the report. There's a link to pages within the practice that explains what all the bands and how the businesses fall within each band.
I just missed that. Was that here?
I think that the lines should be.
One link, sorry.
Yes. But yes, we focused on high-risk premises, manufacturers, businesses with poor compliance, and that's the main focus, and home businesses as well that haven't been visited as well.
What, if I may, what are the most offensive groups on page 63?
Sorry, the business one groups are the highest risk in manufacturers, exporters, food processors. Group 2 is all other manufacturers, and within that, as I say, it depends on the level of compliance and the confidence in the business operators as well that determines the band, because there's a scoring system after each visit, and that will determine the banding moving forward, and also the length of time between inspections.
Okay, but I just wondered if I mean, typically if I was just thinking about this, I would have thought that small retailers or little businesses would be the ones that would be most likely to take shortcuts and things like that. And that would be probably one of the most numerous groups as well. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, also businesses, because they're taking more risk, the length of time has been extended because of the recovery plan after COVID, and there is the concern that these businesses will slip. Unfortunately, we we've got a duty to continue to focus on high-risk premises and those that are under what we call intensive interventions. Because you need to go back more regularly to visit those, and those are businesses that are coming up regularly and taking up a lot of time.
Just ask on page 73, obviously you've given the other food law work with the inspection programme, and you referred there on food poisonings number 12, which seems fairly large to me, because looking at the catastrophic effect of food poisoning, you know, the press at the moment in terms of the catastrophic effects on health, and I just wondered what sort of, you mentioned their intensive follow-up, which I presume would be in this case as well. What sort of work you would do to follow up to ensure that that didn't happen again in instances like that?
We receive food poisoning reports via the NHS, and that's the one to investigate that's been determined the pathogen type, which would then give an indication of, you know, how the person has become infected, and we carry out a questionnaire with the infected person and find out where they're eating, things like that. And if it's a foodborne illness, then we would visit the premises that they've listed. And if we do a full inspection, we would certainly follow up any complaints.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Well, again, I'm happy to formally move forward. I think so much work has gone into this. We can see the work that's happening with the team with very limited resources. And again, this is an excellent report. And it was probably my fault, the link I've asked for links to their reports rather than like the whole thread of information, so that was probably my fault, but happy to formally move this report and thank you for all the work that you do. So thank you. Anyone like to second? Anyone like to debate the paper? No. Okay, we're happy to note the paper. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next one. So the local employability performance paper, and again, this is going to be presented by Emma.
So Emma, could you give the mic a bit more and get policy in the papers?
Sorry about that. So this report provides an overview on the performance of the local employability support provided across the manager and the ongoing role of the local employability partnership, which is chaired by economic development. Section 3 of the report sets out various employability programmes, including the sources and amounts of funding received, which totals 1.38 million for the year 2024. A summary of the programmes is also provided, reporting on employability activity that is provided by each, and the numbers of people receiving employability support. In total, the Management Council's employability service supports around 700 residents each year, building confidence and skills to progress towards an end to work. The report concludes by reporting that the team is on track to spend the year's full allocation. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Councillor Forson, or Councillor Coleman?
Yeah, I've got a number of questions, and we'll probably just roll them all kind of up into one. I mean, it's good to see the report here, and it's great that we are supporting over 700 people. The recommendation, I suppose, is asking to kind of note and comment on the performance and delivery and the performance of local employability services. I can't really comment or, I suppose, note the performance of the services because there's no kind of, for me, there's no outcomes here. There's no, we might be helping 700 people and spending that amount of money, but what are the outcomes for that? Are the employability services then therefore seeing them into employment? Is it changing their kind of outlook, their economic, is it providing more opportunities? There's a lot here, but, for to scrutinise and to be able to kind of, I suppose, note and comment on it, there needs to be a bit more from me around about that. I'm also interested to hear how we kind of tie up with all the other work that's kind of going on in the council, because I know there's a specific resource in the Tackling Child Poverty Fund for CERT around childcare. I know that the council has a pilot for kind of childcare, so I'm keen to see that we're tying in and that we're not duplicating anything. So whilst it is good to see and it's great to see the numbers of people that we're helping, I can't comment on whether it's good, whether the help's been of any use to them whatsoever. So I'm just kind of looking for a bit more of that information really.
So the work across the council is happening and progressing. The child poverty coordinator, which was funded through child poverty funding last year, is a key worker from our team that was put into the family wellbeing partnership this year. That's worked really well. And we think we're getting funding to continue that post for another year. I'm now on the family wellbeing partnership working group. We're with numerous meetings going on now between the two services, and which I had on yesterday with some support. We're looking at gaps, we're looking at making sure we're not duplicating. We're looking at projects we might do jointly next year between employability and family wellbeing partnership activities. So I think that's all going quite well now. Numbers, we can certainly give you more detail on that. In our service, the 700 people is people we supported through the total employability funding. Some of that is commission services, in-house the manager works team. We support about 400 people every year, and out of that, it's over 200 jobs a year that we're putting people into. And it's only 0.3.4, 200, over 200 were into supported into work, and over 100 into training, mainly vocational training. But I can get you more information on some of the commission services. I've got an update on the programmes we commissioned for young people. We have 3 programmes, one with Enable, one with Stirling Community Enterprise for a construction type course, and one with a company for hospitality and customer services. Now we had 20 on each of those, and the feedback so far for the employability, which is for people with additional support needs, there's 2 job outcomes from the first cohort, and we're waiting to hear about the second cohort, which finishes in March. There's 1 job outcome and a modern apprentice outcome and a further education outcome so far from the construction industry, and another 10 started to move through the next cohort. The customer service, 6 job outcomes out of that, of the first 10 that went in, and 1 has been in self-employment, so that's 7 out of 10 for that first cohort. And again, the second cohort finishes at the end of March, and we'll have more on that. So I can get more. Some of the commission programmes only started in October, so we're waiting for outcomes from them at the end of March.
And you want to come in? Yes, it's clear we'll get a little more detail, and this would be helpful in these reports, which will certainly bear in mind for future updates in this committee. And we'll also be bringing employability and economic development update to council in the summer and June.
Yeah, bringing the point. Just to comment on that, I mean, I'm aware personally of a lot of work that goes on, particularly in terms of work around dealing with anxiety and mental health concerns of people trying to get back into the workplace. So I think it would be really useful to see that coming into reports in the future. Councillor Coyne.
Thank you, Chair. The council and its officers have to make value-based judgments all the time. Your outcomes are financial. It's not like working in private practice when it's easy. So what would be helpful for me here, looking at this again from a kind of best value angle, would be if we knew the cost of the outcome. You know, in other words, we could have a list of so many of this and so many of that, and each one cost us X. So you then have an opportunity to look, well, we're getting more value from this funding. And the source of funding side of the of course, is have to actually, I know you've got a table there of all sources, but they're not allocated. In every case, they're allocated some. So it's very useful for looking at some of the best value angles. Here's what we're looking from. Here's what rent, this is the cost of each, what the cost of outcome. It just then helps the whole value judgment process, choosing between what extremes to like.
Just on the back of that as well, just to follow up, in terms of the child poverty funding, which is specified as being 441,000, not including the staffing, but then we've got 84 parents. It'd be useful to know how much of that budget's left, how much of that budget's been allocated per parent. So just a bit of a follow-up and give some points on that before you answer.
Better ask the question. Do you agree?
certainly look at the breakdown of where the funding's come from, how many people are being funded. It's easier to do their own service, so it's the manager works that are dealing with 84 parents, but that's only a part of that funding. A lot of that funding is commission services. For example, we've created, I think it's about 8 places within our early learning centres for people, parents. The child poverty funding is for parental employability, basically. So we have created some placements, work placements with that money. We've put out over 100,000 to providers to deliver, third sector providers, to deliver projects for parents. So we'll get all the outcomes from that and give you the numbers on each of the programmes, what the outcomes have been, and how much money is going into each one. That's able to be done.
Yeah, I think that's really useful because you just see numbers like that and members of the public don't understand the volume of work that actually goes into those figures. So yeah, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I suppose when we're commissioning the services and we're putting them out and we're kind of handing out money, are we asking for specific outcomes? Are we saying we expect you to do X, Y, and Z and expecting reports that come back that say, well, yeah, we've delivered that, or no, that hasn't happened? Because I appreciate we can drill down more on the council run projects, but my expectations would be if we're funding external organisations to deliver something on these, that they're fully aware of what it is that we're expected to get out of it, and kind of do we do this, and are we kind of reviewing those kind of outcomes, and if they're not meeting outcomes, at what point do we, I suppose, have any say on whether they still deliver on the programme, or whether changes have to be made, etc.
For example, the contract we have with Search for the Positive Moves Africa for Prosperity Funding, we've got a set amount of target outputs of people that they're seeing, people into jobs, people into training, people into volunteering opportunities, and we report that to UK government, as well as we get monthly reports back from them with their invoice, and we pay on their invoice on their activity that we've delivered. For the third sector provider programmes, we set aside 100,000 for third sector, and that was decided through the LEPs that we had to give people that opportunity. So we asked for their proposals of projects that would help towards parental employability, and we got a huge range of projects back, and we did an assessment panel on them. So we were taking what they said their outcomes were going to be, and yes, they were reporting against what they were. Some of that's been quite successful, and some of it is just the same parents getting more support, rather than we were trying to increase the number of parents that we were engaging with. But a lot of those provider projects, because we didn't get funding until June, we didn't put out the projects didn't start September, October, some of them. It was a real struggle for some of the providers to find new parents. So we found in a lot of cases that it's been the same parents. So we're now reviewing with the LEP and with our team. What we do is we don't have an allocation yet for next year. It's annual funding. We have to have that money out the door by the end of March, and we don't know what next year's allocation is. But we are starting a discussion with the LEP and with Family Wellbeing Partnership across the services to see if we get similar levels of funding, and that's what it's for. What would we like to do with it, and what would we not repeat again? Because there's been some really good stuff and some things that probably haven't worked as well as we would like.
Councillor Coyne?
It occurs to me, just listening to what's been said, that in fact, when we're looking at the council budget at a list of things to choose to include or exclude from the budget, it would be very useful to know the leverage effect of some of our investment. For example, we might be looking at sticking 2,000 into a project which sucks in 8,000, so we actually get a multiplier of 5 on our investment, whereas another investment might just be 2,000. So you think, well, that will generate 10,000, which is good in the community, and this will generate 2,000. So it helps us, it would help us in budgeting if we knew the leverage effect of investments that we're making in third sector outfits and things like that. So that sucks in the idea of getting information back from what did our £2,000 enable you to do? Feed that back in. That pound was actually worth £5. I mean, so we'll keep that in. Is that a good idea? That's what
Someone to respond.
It certainly is everything. Consider out to find a lot of third sector providers. We find it quite difficult to match fund any grant that they get. Whereas with part of UK Shape, nothing to do with employability, but UK Shape Prosperity, we're looking at communities grant, and we're looking at asking for a match funding element to that for the projects, so we get bigger projects and better value from the community groups. So we'll have a look at it for the employability programmes, it's maybe not always straightforward.
Just a question on modern apprenticeships. Obviously, I remember years going by in all councils there were loads of modern apprentices, and obviously we're looking at a fairly low number, 13 at the moment. Is that due to external funding available, and if so, will there be more funding available in the future?
There is the external funding for apprenticeships comes through the training element, but the council still has to pay the full wage costs of the apprenticeship. So it's really down to every service and what the budgets are and what their needs are. It's part of the workforce strategy that Chris is involved in, and we are helping with writing a report on some of the background of the apprenticeship programmes. The council, I understand, traditionally had SDA contracts to deliver their own apprenticeships, but that stopped a number of years ago. And you'll see that in the funding, it's only a tiny residual contract. We've only got for 2 places that we're still actually managing. The rest are all what our services will do as broker training for other services. Will help find training providers and help the services with the whole apprenticeship paperwork and the process of it, but we're not actually managing any apprenticeships in the general time.
Any other questions? Well, I'm happy to move the paper. Again, thanks to everyone for the work that's done. And as I think Councillor Forson alluded to, and I've mentioned as well, we know there's a substantial amount of work goes behind these figures. And that would be really useful to see at committee in the future, to really see the real flavour of the work weeks and case studies, that kind of element as well. But obviously, there's some really good figures there in terms of the number of people that are being supported in this employment, and we realise the cost of living crisis is seriously impacting people. So it's really valuable work that's taking place. So thank you, and I'm happy to move the paper into the second.
Yeah, happy to second the paper. I think as you've said, there's an awful lot of work that goes on behind this. And I think the employability funding has got a really important role to play in the kind of overall aspirations of the council around about tackling poverty, inclusive growth, raising living standards, etc. Which is probably why it's really important to see this. And as I said, I would like to see a bit more kind of meat behind it. The outcomes are so important. I'm conscious that myself and Lorraine Sanda and Andrea Coulter were meeting with Minister for Community Safety yesterday, and we were very much pressing the case that we need to make sure that all funding streams are focused on priorities, and that we know what the priorities are and we're getting the best value for our money. And I'm really conscious that as a council, if we want to take the governments to say you need to be doing this, then we need to be doing it ourselves. So providing a bit more flavour on the outcomes and making sure that we are getting best value from those commission services are going to be really, really important as well moving forward. I'm heartened to see that there's no joined up working with the family wellbeing partnership, because for me that's driving a lot of our agenda in the council, and we can't not be joining all these things up. So we need to make sure we're putting our money in the right directions, and we're asking individuals to do that as well.
Yes, thank you. Would you like to debate the paper? Councillor Benny.
Just one thing really, talking about apprenticeships and how there's very few apprenticeships actually going through. We've got working an ageing population, and I would have thought it would be a very good idea to try and engage the younger generation to actually come in as apprenticeships. I know it's difficult if you've not got the money behind you to do it, but I think we might be able to look a different way of getting apprentices on board through different aspects of within Glamanager. So I think it would be a good thing to actually look at that much more closely, so that we've got this people at the background who are coming up and actually being able to do this, because there's a lot of people who are going to be leaving work and stuff like that. So we need apprentices really within that area.
Thanks, Lisa. Anything else like to run? No, are we happy to note the paper? Okay, thank you. Okay, confirm that's the public part of the meeting now concluded, so the recording will be stopped. So thank you for your interest today in attending. I think it's been a really good meeting, so enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.